In this video, I will cover Dexcom G6 sensors from A to Z, and I'll be sharing a ton of practical tips that I learned while using this sensor for over a year now. Let's go! Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tom. I've been a diabetic for over 30 years, and on this channel, I help you navigate your diabetes journey. Guys, I've been getting tons of questions about Dexcom G6 sensors, and I have to apologize because I really don't have time to respond to all of them. But I decided to make this video and respond to the most common questions, plus give you some actionable tips and hacks. I will be sharing my tips on how to keep the sensor stay on longer, my favorite Dexcom sites, my biggest mistakes, how you can extend the sensor life, and a lot more. To get started, let me show you how I apply my sensor and how I make sure it doesn't peel off and it stays on for the full 10 days. It's really easy. You're gonna need the sensor applicator, which you use to attach the sensor to your body, the transmitter, which sends the data from the sensor to your phone or receiver, and an alcohol wipe to clean your skin. Step number one is simple. Pick the right spot. You want to pick a spot that's flat, where you're not sweating a lot, and where your skin is not shrinking and stretching all the time. And the place might be different for different people, depending on your lifestyle. So I tried to experiment, and I tried upper abdomen, lower back, upper arms. Although not all of these sites are officially approved by the regulators, you might find out that some of them will work really well for you. You should pick a spot that is at least 3 inches or 8 centimeters away from your infusion sets or injection site to make sure to get accurate readings. Try to avoid areas like ribs, hip bones, and spots with scarring, tattoos, excessive hairs, or irritation. Step 2 is prepare your skin well before you put the sensor in. And guys, I cannot stress the importance of this enough. Make sure that your skin is not damaged in the spot where you want to place the sensor, because the adhesive will not stick that well to damaged skin. And if the skin is damaged, then exfoliate. Wash your skin really well with warm water and soap, and use the most basic soap there is, because all kinds of fancy soap with the hydrating components will make your skin more oily, and the sensor adhesive doesn't stick really well to oily skin. So just use the basic soap, don't use anything fancy. And if the spot you picked is really hairy, consider shaving it. Step 3. Clean the spot that you picked with an alcohol wipe. I always try to clean it really well and let it completely dry off. This step is so basic, but really important because the alcohol removes any remaining oily elements from your skin, and the adhesive will stick so much better. And better get a big box of these, because you will not find any in the original sensor pack. Step 4. Add an extra layer of liquid adhesive on the spot where you want to apply the Dexcom. I like to use skin prep wipes, because they really help the sensor adhesive stick better. It's probably a good idea to apply the skin prep in a donut shape and leave a spot in the middle where the needle with the filament will go under your skin, because this way the extra adhesive can't mess up your readings. Honestly, I don't think it would, but just in case. Now wait until the adhesive feels tacky, but don't let it completely dry off. In the meantime, you can unpack your sensor applicator and get mentally ready for the shot. Place your sensor applicator on the spot with the adhesive and insert it. And you really want to do this in one go. You don't want to move the applicator and mess with it once it has touched the skin. Because when you place the applicator on your skin and then lift it up and place it elsewhere, you're kind of messing up the adhesive, and it will not stick as well as it would have on the first try. Now once you inserted the transmitter, wrap around the patch a couple times to make sure it's secured, and let's move to step 6. For extreme stickiness, use an overpatch to secure and protect your Dexcom. And I always do this, especially with Dexcom. When I know that I will be active, that I will be in a hot climate, I will be sweating, in and out of water, I always use an overpatch with Dexcom. And step number 7 is don't go too crazy right after the application. Give it some time, wait an hour before any wet activities, and pay attention. Watch out when you're taking off your clothes, watch out for those door frames, for those seat belts. Keep in mind that you're wearing the sensor, and I'm sure it will stay on for the full 10 days. By the way, the application doesn't hurt and you can barely feel it. So once you attach the sensor will be good for 10 days. But wait, we're not done yet. We need to attach the transmitter. So take the transmitter, clean it with an alcohol wipe and let it dry. And then insert the toe of the transmitter into the slot of the transmitter holder and snap the transmitter firmly into place. The transmitter is good for 3 months and you can use it repeatedly for a total of 9 sensors. Now that we applied the sensor, we need to start it in the Dexcom G6 app. So click New Sensor and enter the 4-digit sensor code from the sensor you just applied. Now some people say that you should try to avoid using 2 sensors with the exact same 4-digit code, because this might mess up the system. So if you have another sensor with a different sensor code, try to use it in between these 2 sensors that have the same code. But if you don't have one, if you only have 2 sensors or 3 sensors or 4 sensors with the same sensor code, just make sure there is a long enough break before you remove the old sensor and apply the new sensor, just to make sure that the system doesn't think that you're trying to extend the same sensor for longer than 10 days. By the way, you can also scan the sensor code without entering it manually. Pretty cool. And next, click Start Sensor. It will take 2 hours for the new sensor to warm up, and after these 2 hours you will start receiving your blood glucose data and alerts on your G6 app. The readings will update every 5 minutes via Bluetooth, as long as you keep the Bluetooth on and as long as you keep the G6 app running in the background. If you close the app, you will lose the alert, so don't close the app, let it run in the background. So that's the sensor application. I told you it was easy. Another question I get a lot is what my favorite Dexcom G6 sites are. And I find this question super important because the site selection can really make or break your Dexcom G6 experience, in my opinion. So let's look into it. So let's talk about the 7 sensor sites that I tested. I sorted them from my least favorite to my most favorite. All the sensor sites featured in this video except for abdomen and upper arm are not approved by regulators. So if you decide to use them, it is at your own risk. When testing these 7 Dexcom G6 sensor sites, I realized a few things that are important for anyone who is trying to experiment with the new site. The sensors always feel better in an area with some fat. If you apply it to a bonier or more muscular area, it might be more stingy. My least favorite site and a big loser of my test ended up being lower abdomen, which funnily enough is a site that is approved for Dexcom wear everywhere in the world. Main reason why I don't like this site is that the Dexcom adhesive comes off really easily when it's placed on abdomen. And I think it's because I sweat quite a bit and the skin in this area is constantly shrinking and stretching when I move. And I didn't even do any sit-ups. Also, the abdomen was not as accurate as some other sites that I tested, and the sensor got very itchy after a few days. Honestly, I couldn't wait to take it off. My 6th most favorite spot was the upper abdomen. The sensor stayed on just a bit better there and was a bit less itchy than in the lower abdomen. But generally, the experience with both abdomen sites was very similar. And so for both abdomen locations, I took advantage of my go-to skin grip patches, because without them, the sensor would definitely not last for the full 10 days. And I'll put a discount link for you in the show notes if you want to check them out. Now, a few advantages that I see with the abdomen placement. The area is quite big and flat, so it allows you to rotate the side and allow your skin to rest when you place the sensor in a different spot on the abdomen. I have to admit that I have quite a fatty layer there, so the insertion and the actual wear of the sensor was extremely comfortable. It was not painful at all. The location is very well protected from external objects, so it doesn't get caught on anything. And it's very well hidden under my clothes, so I don't get any weird stares and weird questions from strangers. Are you a cyborg? Is this a tracking device? My number 5 favorite site is chest. And this came as a surprise, to be honest, because chest was my absolute favorite site for the Freestyle Libre sensor placement. Chest has great accuracy and it's super comfortable. I sometimes almost forget that my sensor is placed there. Unlike some other sites, I literally never lie on my sensor when it's placed on my chest, so I don't get any compression loss. But the Dexcom adhesive doesn't stick at all on my chest. The adhesive started peeling on big time on day 3, and I would definitely not do 10 days without an overpatch. Another little con of the chest placement is that because the Dexcom sensor is quite bulky, it creates a noticeable bump under your shirt. So if that's something that would bother you, chest is not the best. Did you catch that little rhyme there? My number 4 favorite Dexcom site is back of the calf. Calf is a very special site. Some people love it and some people hate it. And I have to say that I love it. And the main reason why I love this site, especially in summer, is that you can show off your Dex. And I love showing it off. Because the main goal of this YouTube channel is to help diabetics keep their blood sugar in a range. And Honestly, CGM is the best tool for that. The more people know about it, the better. Hit that like button if you feel the same, would you? Honestly, I was a bit worried that inserting the sensor in my upper calf would hurt, because it is a quite muscular area. It really did hurt a bit when I inserted the sensor, and I could feel it even a few hours after I applied it. It felt a bit stingy when I walked. But I honestly think that if you have more fat on your calf, you would not even feel it. And I have to say that wearing the sensor on my calf felt really special, because not many people place it there. I felt like a CGM gangsta for a bit there. Accuracy was very good too, and starting day 2, I completely forgot that I'm wearing the sensor when it was in my calf. I couldn't see it even when I looked in the mirror, but my gangster soul knew it was there. 2 issues I had with this side. 1, my legs are quite hairy in that area, and I didn't shave them. So when I was taking the sensor off, it felt like a free depilation. And 2, I almost knocked my sensor off a chair a couple times when I was standing up. So next time I would probably apply my sensor more on the side of the calf rather than on the back side, to avoid that contact with the chairs. My third most favorite area is the inside of my upper arm. And this might again come as a surprise to you, because I absolutely love to use this side with Freestyle Libre, but not so much with Dexcom. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good site. It gives good accuracy, it's hidden from those weird guys. Are you trying to quit smoking? Let's press this off button. Yes, those guys. The inside of the upper arm is also protected from external objects like door frames, seat belts, and so on. It didn't hurt, it didn't bleed, but Dexcom is a lot bulkier than Libre. And I could feel that the sensor is there when I had it in my inside of the upper arm. Pretty much every time I moved my arm. It was bothering me because I knew I could feel all the time that something is there, something that shouldn't be there. I didn't get this feeling with Libre. There were also a few nights when I slept on the sensor and I put too much pressure on it, which resulted in compression lows, and the low alerts woke me up, although my blood sugar was completely fine. And that's why the inner upper arm is not my absolute favorite. My second most favorite Dexcom site is the upper thigh. I placed the sensor about 3 to 4 inches below my waistline on the outside of my upper thigh, and this proved to be a great spot. Super accurate, almost on point readings. It lasted very long. Even after 10 days of use, the adhesive was still firmly in place. I actually extended that sensor in a thigh, and even after 20 days of use, the adhesive was still strongly attached to my body. It didn't start peeling off at all. And the upper thigh was super comfortable. It didn't hurt, and most of the time I totally forgot it was there. Really great site for me. I just had a couple minor issues with this placement. 1, I got very minor bleeding right after the insertion, but it stopped after a few seconds, and it didn't anyhow impact the performance of the sensor. And 2, the thigh area, at least mine, is quite hairy, and so when I'm gonna use it next time, I will probably consider shaving it. Actually, there were 3 minor issues, not 2. The third one is that when you're taking off your pants, you need to be a bit careful so you don't pull out the sensor. So always take down your pants slowly. I know we can get excited very fast, especially in some situations. So keep in mind your Dexcom is still there. You know which situations I mean, right? Before I get to the site that performed the best for me, I just want to briefly mention a few other sites that I haven't tested yet for various reasons, but I know other people have been using them and have been quite happy about them. And these are love handles, lower back, forearm, upper buttocks, and the side of one's torso. My absolute favorite Dexcom side that I discovered so far is the outside of my upper arm. I feel like this side provides me with the best of all worlds. It's very accurate, very comfortable. I almost forgot that I'm wearing the sensor there. Also, the side was very durable, and I managed to keep the sensor there for over 20 days when I was filming another video where I was showing you how to extend the Dexcom G6 sensor. The adhesive sticks really well on the outside or on the back side of my arm, and I still get to show off my sensor when I wear short sleeves. The only couple minor disadvantages that I see with this area are: 1, it is not very well protected and it is relatively easy to knock off the sensor, and 2, it is possible that you will lie on the sensor when you sleep, so you always need to find that spot that you don't lie on that doesn't give you those compression lows at night. Guys, I can totally imagine that you might rank the sensor sites differently and that you have different preferences, and if that's the case, let me know in the comments below what your favorite Dexcom G6 site is. In the next sequence, I'm gonna give you a few quick tips in a rapid fire action. My first tip is more of a reminder, because the Dexcom G6 is taking the glucose glucose readings from the interstitial fluid, and the interstitial fluid readings will always be slightly lagging behind your readings from blood. So keep this in mind, especially in the moments when your glucose is rising or dropping sharply, because in those moments, those little lags might turn into quite a big difference between the sensor reading and the glucometer reading. You can view your readings on the Tandem's T-Slim X2 insulin pump. So you actually don't even need a phone or a watch with you to see what your blood glucose is if you're using this insulin pump. And you can also turn on the Control IQ function on the pump and create a closed loop, and the pump will start adjusting your insulin dosage depending on where your blood sugar is headed. I'm using this function myself and I'm loving it so far. Guys, we covered a lot of tips so far. But what about mistakes? I feel like I'm learning the most when I make a stupid mistake. So let me share you my biggest Dexcom mistakes with you now. Mistake number 1 is keeping your receiver too far away from the sensor. Dexcom says that there can be up to a 6-meter distance between the transmitter and the receiver. But it's not quite like that, because when you place the sensor with the transmitter on your left arm, for example, and your receiver, be it your insulin pump or your mobile phone, in your right pocket of your pants, you might be losing the connection. It was happening to me quite a lot. And since I found out about this problem, I try to keep the transmitter with the sensor and my receiver on the same side of my body, especially when I sleep or when I go for a walk, because these are the two situations when I was losing the signal the most. Mistake number 2 is not using the calibration feature of Dexcom G6 correctly. The calibration feature helps you to calibrate the sensor readings to your fingerstick readings in situation where your readings are way off. You just go to settings in your Dexcom G6 app, click calibrate, and then enter your blood sugar value. But wait, not too fast, because if you calibrate well, you will make things better and you will get more accurate readings. But if you calibrate incorrectly, you will make things a lot worse. And here are a few tips for a successful sensor calibration that worked for me. Tip number 1, never calibrate during the first 24 hours, because the readings during the first day, and for me personally, especially during the first 6 to 8 hours when I have a new sensor on, the readings are way off. It's not ideal, I know, but if you calibrate the sensor during these first few hours, you will mess things up. Trust me, I've been there. You might even break the sensor because the sensor will get into a calibration loop and it will never recover. So don't calibrate during the first few hours. From my experience, the readings always get way closer on the second day, and the second day is a much better time to calibrate the sensor if needed. Tip number 2, keep in mind that not only your sensor but also your glucometer can be up to 20% off from the blood sugar result that you would get from a lab. So don't calibrate when the difference between your glucometer and your sensor is less than 20%. This table from Dexcom shows the acceptable range of sensor readings. If you are within this range, you probably don't need to calibrate. Tip number 3, when you decide to calibrate, make sure that the blood glucose from your finger prick is as accurate as possible, like if your life depends on it. So do all the things we should all be doing, but we never do. Check that your test strips are not expired. Wash your hands with soap, dry them with a clean towel, and get a new lancet. Don't look at me like that. I know you haven't changed it for a long time. Only calibrate when your blood glucose is stable and when your arrow is pointing horizontally to the right, not when your arrow is pointing up or down. When your blood glucose is changing quickly, you will never be able to calibrate it because, as you probably know, the sensor is taking readings from the interstitial fluid, which is lagging approximately 10 minutes behind the readings from blood. So if you calibrate in those moments when your glucose is moving sharply up or sharply down, the blood glucose is already ahead of the sensor and the calibration will never work as good as it would if you are stable. Tip number 5, don't calibrate after you just ate, took insulin, did exercise, or lied on the sensor, because all these things can impact the readings and can make the readings move quite fast. And so you will not be stable after these activities and you will not be able to calibrate effectively. Mistake number 4 I was making is not taking full advantage of all Dexcom G6 features. And in my opinion, there are 3 key features that make Dexcom G6 stand out and that make it a perfect piece of technology. Number 1 is blood sugar readings on your watch. And this is a big one for me. Since I installed the Dexcom G6 app, I can check blood sugar readings and graph on my Apple Watch. And it's so much more more convenient than having to pull up my phone all the time. I noticed that since my blood sugar readings were available on my Apple Watch, I've been checking a lot more often, and that's a good thing. Another great feature that helped me massively increase my time in range is alerts. But the alerts can get really annoying. One mistake I made at the beginning is I wanted to use all the alerts available and I set them too aggressively because I had really high expectation. And so I was getting alerts a lot and it was driving me crazy. I almost started ignoring them. Over time I learned I should not be using all the alerts that are available there, and I should not set them too aggressively. I should set them to fit my lifestyle so that they don't bother me too much. Getting the alarms set up correctly makes a big difference and really improves the quality of your life rather than bothering you all the time and driving you crazy. And the third absolutely great feature of Dexcom G6 system is that it integrates with Control IQ. And I have been using the Control IQ algorithm powered by Dexcom G6 and my Tandem T-Slim X2 insulin pump for about half a year. It has been a game changer for me. It's like my little diabetes buddy, a little diabetes co-pilot. Some people don't even know about the Control IQ integration. My mistake number 5 was not using the correct sensor code during activation. In one of my previous videos, I show you 2 ways to restart the Dexcom G6 sensor. And I also said that you can use any 4-digit Dexcom sensor code to restart your sensor. Well, I want to take this back and I want to apologize because this is another mistake that I've been making. We should always be using the 4-digit code that is printed on each individual sensor inserter to activate each individual sensor. I learned that the reason why each Dexcom G6 sensor has a 4-digit code has something to do with calibration that is done in the Dexcom factory. And I assume that each individual code on the Dexcom inserter tells the Dexcom algorithm where on the calibration scale the specific sensor is and how it should read the data. So using a wrong sensor code could lead to inaccurate readings. I really hope that you guys didn't make the same mistakes I made, but let's move on to the next topic. A topic that doesn't get a lot of attention, but I guess it's equally or even more important than the other topics because a lot of people are asking about it. And that is sensor removal and recycling options. I've had this bad boy on for 10 days and it just expired, so it's time to replace it. By the way, you can also replace a sensor that hasn't expired yet. To do that, just go to your Dexcom G6 app, click settings and then stop sensor. Now if you have dry skin like me, the sensor can be stuck pretty well after those 10 days and it might be a bit painful to remove it. But if you follow the 5 steps that I'm gonna share with you now, I can promise you, you will feel no pain, no skin irritation. It will be absolutely seamless experience. Step 1 is softening the adhesive with a liquid adhesive remover like Unisolv or Tack Away, which you can get for a few bucks on Amazon. Just get a cotton swab and apply the adhesive remover over the adhesive around the transmitter holder and let it soak for a couple minutes or even longer depending on how well it's stuck. And this will help melt the adhesive, which will then come off really smoothly. And if you want a budget option, then you can use baby oil, coconut oil or any kind of oily substance you have around the house. It will do pretty much the same job for you. Step 2. Once the adhesive softens, then peel the bad boy off gently in one motion. And it should come off really smoothly. You shouldn't even feel it. But if you feel any resistance or discomfort, you can always add more of the adhesive remover or baby oil to smooth things down a little bit. And try to peel it off slowly because tearing it off too fast or too harsh is what could injure your skin or cause a bit of a skin irritation. Now, if there is any glue residue on your skin, just remove it with adhesive remover or warm soapy water. For me, using the water and soap is much more gentle way, and I feel like my skin will thank me for that in the long term. Step 3, separate the transmitter from the sensor. And you really want to do this because you can use the transmitter repeatedly with multiple sensors for up to 3 months. So you're gonna need the transmitter for your next sensor. To separate the transmitter from the sensor, simply break off the oval part of the plastic holder in which the transmitter is sitting and pull out the transmitter. Now, if there is any oily or sticky residue on the transmitter, wash it off with warm soapy water and clean the transmitter with the alcohol wipe so it's ready to use with your next sensor. Now, if you use the Dexcom G6 sensor regularly, then you need to change your sensor site every 10 days. so you need at least 36 sensors per year. And again, each of them comes with this huge sensor applicator. That's a lot of waste. So all in all, with the Dexcom G6 applicator kits, I will fill 2 of these cardboard boxes per year. Now Dexcom has 1 million users worldwide, which means 2 million cardboard boxes of plastic waste, which is approximately 75 cars of New York City subway. So I guess it kind of makes sense to start thinking of recycling. Is there a way to recycle this? Well, the Dexcom G6 user manual says that you should throw out the applicator and the sensor following local rules for disposal of blood and body fluid contacting components. The transmitter you should throw out following local rules for disposal of electronics. But there is a way to take apart and recycle most of the sensor applicator. Let me show you how. Please keep in mind that what I'm going to show you is a DIY solution, something you can do on your own, but it is at your own risk. You will be dealing with sharps and you could get hurt if you're not careful, so please proceed with caution. Also, what I'm going to show you is something that I do in the country where I live, and the rules for waste disposal might be different country by country, so always make sure that you follow your local waste disposal regulations. My method is simple. You're gonna need your used sensor applicator kit, pliers, and a screwdriver. Nothing more. First, you need to take the plastic shell apart. You can do this with a screwdriver. Just be careful while doing it, because there is a needle hiding in this hole in the dark part of the applicator. Now just go around the shell and find a spot where you can squeeze the screwdriver in between these 2 plastic parts and try to pull them apart. If you can't get in, your screwdriver might be too big and you might need to get a smaller one. I realized it's easier to use a really small screwdriver to get in and then a bigger one to crack the shell open. And you want to go around the shell and do the exact same thing on both sides until the shell is wide open. This white part of the applicator is where all the sharps are, so put it aside for now. Next, get your pliers and separate all metal pieces and all plastic pieces, because these can be recycled separately. It's quite easy to do, just take everything apart piece by piece. Now back to the sharps. My recommendation here is to throw the whole piece in the sharps container, because I don't think it's worth trying to take it apart and risking stabbing your fingers. But if you're not scared of needles, then you can try to separate the 2 needles that are in the package from the white plastic. Just please be really careful while doing this. Now once you've taken everything apart, you should end up with 5 pieces of plastic and 2 pieces of metal that I'm sure can be recycled if you take them to your nearest recycling place. The 2 needles you should always place in the sharps container. Another thing that I place in the sharps container is the sensor itself. And the transmitter I dispose with other electronics. I would be curious, guys, do you recycle? Let me know in the comments. Now the question I received by far the most is how to extend the Dexcom G6 sensor. How to make it work longer than those 10 days. And of course I have a response to that. There are actually 2 ways how to still do it in 2022. So click on the video on the screen right now to find out how to do that. And if you want to connect with me directly, join my Patreon community or book a private session with me. Links are in the description. I will see you there. Ciao!